Good morning, Summit Trail students. It is my pleasure to start us off today for the Remembrance Day service 2022. As we get going today, I hope that this is a good opportunity for us to be thinking about our past and our future as our leadership students have put together a wonderful presentation. So this time I would like to hand it over to Annika to start us off.
Good morning, students. To begin, we would like to acknowledge that Rocky View Schools is situated on Treaty 7 territory, which includes the Nittedawbi, where the Blackfoot, made up of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai nations, the Stoney Nakoda, who are made up of the Wesley, Bearspaw, and Chiniki nations, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and is homeland to Métis peoples. Rocky View Schools acknowledges and recognizes all the Indigenous peoples whose footprints have marked these lands from time immemorial. Together, we can learn and honor the ways of knowing of Indigenous peoples and all peoples for future generations. Now, please rise and remove all hats for the singing of O Canada.
I would now like to introduce our amazing principal, Mr. Smith.
Hello, Summit Trail students, and welcome to those from all around Alberta who are joining us today. We have students in northern and southern Alberta that are part of Summit Trails Online High School, and boy, it's a privilege to have you part of our school, everybody. I'm David Smith, your principal, and I'm here today at the Calgary Field of Crosses. You can see behind me the crosses that represent those individuals that gave up their lives for peacekeeping missions as well for war efforts. You know, the students today are going to be talking about the why we remember. And I suppose that seems obvious why we want to remember these things. But I wonder if we can go just a little bit deeper in that thinking. Now, I heard a veteran talk last week about some of the things that he's worried about moving forward in our generation. You know, we are 2 generations now removed from the past war efforts, but we are not removed from those peacekeeping missions. We still have family members and, of course, people that are going abroad, helping other countries. And boy, we sure appreciate that. The difference is that in my generation, we have not lived through the threats of losing our democracy. And so we look at things a little different. When we look at peacekeeping, we look at it from a support side of things, and I think that's fantastic. But his point was that we have not lived through the events of war or the losses on a larger scale of our family members because of democracy. So I think about that, and he's absolutely right. I am very thankful for living in Canada, living in Alberta, and the freedoms that I have. And I did not have to live through that experience of losing a family member. So what can I do to understand the why? I think for me, one of the biggest things is thinking about our past. Learning about not just what the people in Alberta, 3,500 Southern Albertans that gave their lives, but also what was accomplished during that time. And then looking forward to the future of thinking, well, what does that mean for me? And how can I learn from the past, either to repeat some things in the future or to not repeat those things? And that's the type of education for all of us in this generation we need to be thinking about as we have extreme gratification for those that gave our lives. So in a moment, we're going to pass it on to the students who have a presentation that they've put together, and they've put some real thought into thinking about the why we remember. If you get a chance, whether you're in Northern Alberta or Southern Alberta, I encourage you to visit places like the Field of Crosses. If there's something in your area where they are commemorating a Remembrance Day, I encourage you to actually go and actually walk between the crosses. It will help you go a little deeper in your thankfulness and also your understanding. All right, well, thank you for joining us this morning, and at this time I'd like to pass it over to our students.
I've always wondered why Remembrance Day was celebrated on the 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th hour, ever since I was a young child. It turns out it is quite an important part of remembrance. The British Commonwealth first commemorated Remembrance Day in 1919 to honor the Armistice Agreement that ended the First World War on Monday, November 11, 1918 at 11 a.m.
They were home from war and it was time to celebrate. World War I was the first truly global conflict, and on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the guns fell silent. It was a day marked at Buckingham Palace in London as Queen Mary appeared in the balcony with thousands in the Mall celebrating. Armistice Day was born, an event that set the trend across the world for decades to come. 2 years ago, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge marked the centenary of the start of World War I by planting ceramic poppies at the Tower of London in memory of almost 1 million British and Empire soldiers who died in the trenches. The red flower has become a potent symbol of the blood which was spilled and the sacrifice of those who lost their lives in the conflict. The poppy flourished in the fields of Flanders in Belgium, which was engaged in the war from its start to its end. It is here that thousands of soldiers of many nationalities rest. On the walls of the Menin Gate in Ypres, a sector where 5 battles took place during the 4-year conflict, visitors can see the names of their ancestors who perished. More than 54,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers, whose bodies have no known grave, are included in the list.
It's my wife's great uncle. He was killed at Polygon Wood in 7th of October 1917.
The memories of those who died in what was one of the bloodiest conflicts have been handed down from generation to generation. So great was the trauma of the war and the effect it had on families. But it is not only for those who lost a distant relative. It is also to mark 4 years which transformed the world in which we live. It changed beyond recognition and set in motion future events.
It was 100 years ago, World War I, but it's still shaping the world in which we live. Without that war, we might not have had the disappearance of Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. I think we almost certainly wouldn't have had the Bolsheviks seizing power in Russia in 1917. And when you think of what flowed from that, it shaped the whole of the 20th century. And the First World War also created the circumstances within which the Second World War became possible.
More than 30 nations were involved in what some people call the Great War. There are no survivors still alive. The poppy was first worn in 1921 and has now also become a symbol of those who fell in World War II.
As we discussed yesterday in Connect class, November 8th was Indigenous Veterans Day. Take a moment to remember the over 12,000 Indigenous veterans who fought for our country after having their land and their rights taken from them. These brave souls stepped up when Canada needed them and fought to keep our rights. So let's take a moment to remember those who fought for our country.
Summit Trail students were asked on their views for Remembrance Day and why it's meaningful to them. These were the responses.
Remembrance Day for me is remembering our fallen soldiers who sacrificed their lives to protect and defend our country.
Remembrance Day is important to me because my papa was in World War I and I've heard lots of stories about him, and he worked for the underground French.
Remembrance Day is important to me because we spend a day remembering and being grateful for the people who made sacrifices for this country in World War I.
Remembrance Day is a day to remember the fallen soldiers who have fought for Canada and kept Canada safe and supported our allies during times of war, and to remember them for their sacrifice to Canada to make sure we live another day.
To respect all the Canadian soldiers who fought and risked their lives so we can live in a free country today.
It is important to me because it helps me remember the past and what people did for me.
Remembrance Day is important to me because that's when we acknowledge the sacrifice those who served our country made.
Remembrance Day is the time we use to commemorate those who have fallen and those who still battle for our country's freedom.
To me, Remembrance Day is a very important day where we take the time to remember all the loved ones that we have lost.
Remembrance Day is important to my papa's family.
Remembrance Day to me is a day to commemorate the lives that fought and were lost to the war effort. It's important to acknowledge and teach about the past to prevent certain atrocities from happening again.
It's a day where we acknowledge the courage and sacrifices of those who have served for their country.
It's important to me because it helps us remember to acknowledge the courage and sacrifices of those who served our country.
It is important to me because I had family in these wars who fought for our country and for their family and their friends. They should always be remembered as the true heroes that they are.
Please join us in the listening of Standing Strong and True by various Canadian country artists. This song focuses on the connection between members of the military and the importance of what they are risking to protect us and our beloved country.
I hear the guns, I feel the fire. With my last breath, my spirit flies. And I see the faces of my friends fighting till the end. So many fearless hearts. I feel their courage and their pain. Their lives should never be in vain. From heaven's gate, a perfect view. The plain and simple truth is lighting up the dawn. Love one another. That stranger is your brother. Leave a footprint everywhere you go. Give yesterday forgiven, today just for living. Say a prayer every night for tomorrow. On God for me and you, so we can love one another. That stranger is your brother. Leave a footprint everywhere you go. Keep yesterday forgiven, today just for living. Say a prayer every night for tomorrow. Bless the true believers to stand and fight for freedom, so we can live in peace right here at home. Keep yesterday forgiven, today just for living. Say a prayer every night for tomorrow. Say a prayer every night for tomorrow.
The last post has traditionally been played on a bugle to commemorate the Army. Today, we play a bugle call at military funerals and Remembrance Day ceremonies to pay tribute to all fallen soldiers. Please rise with us for the last post and the moment of silence.
This year, remember to get your poppy because every poppy has something to share. If you scan your poppy this year, you'll be met with a Canadian with a story to remember. iPhone users can go to poppystory.ca to scan their poppies and find information on Canadian veterans. You can also go to that website to put your donations in to help veterans across Canada.
We'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in ensuring that the veterans who fought for our freedom are not forgotten. I'm so grateful for the opportunities we have such as learning online and doing presentations as we are doing now. For this, I thank all the people who have fought for us and our country. Don't forget to remember the heroes of our great country tomorrow. And good luck in your classes, everyone. Have a great day.